everybody, this is the awesome MCB here, and today we're going to look at how to install a Windows 10 virtual machine. Now, I use virtual machines pretty much every single time I do an antivirus review or anti-malware review because that's how I can do it without infecting my own machine. But the one I use is called VirtualBox. You can also use ones used for VMware, but this one's just going to be based off VirtualBox. Alright, so before you start, you want to make sure that in your BIOS you have the virtualization technology turned on, or you're going to be running into quite a few problems. And up to the fact that it won't work at all. So, yeah. So once you have that turned on, go ahead and we're going to go ahead and press this new button here. And then now it wants to know what an operating system. So, of course, we're going to do Windows 10, so we're just going to do Windows 10, and since I already have one, so I don't get mixed up, we're just going to put a 2 there. Now, whenever you put in here in the name, it will usually try its best to detect down here and see what it is, but you can still go back and change them manually. But, of course, we're going to be installing the 64-bit version of Windows 10, so we're just going to leave that. Now, it's going to want to ask how much RAM you want to allocate. I currently have 16 gigabytes installed on my system. So usually you can just leave it at the default, or if you want to give it a little bit more you can. So I'm going to give it 4 gigabytes. Now you also want to create a virtual hard drive, which will pretty much use part of your hard drive. And we're going to be using the virtual disk image. You can use one of those. I've heard that virtual disk virtual machine disk can be used to go between like VMware and all that, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to be using VirtualBox disk image. Now, you can do dynamically allocated or fixed sized. What dynamically allocated does, it means it says in your virtual machine that's how much storage you can use, and it will fill up more that you use onto your normal hard drive, or you can use a fixed size, which means it will instantly take up 50 gigabytes for it. So, of course, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do dynamic allocated. Sometimes it can be faster to use a fixed size, but not much. Now it wants to know how much you want to storage you want to store. You can even change the location where you want to store the virtual hard drive. So we're just going to leave it in the default location, and we'll give it 50 gigabytes, should be plenty. Now, we are not ready to boot into the virtual machine yet. What we usually want to do is have a click on it, or then click on the settings icon, or we can just right click and click settings. Now we're going to go ahead into the system, and we're going to go to the processors. Now if you have more than one core, you can allocate more if you want to, but of course since we have 4 cores, I'm just going to be doing 2. You can use up all 4, but you got to remember that when you're doing this, you want to make sure you limit the CPU cap so it doesn't completely cause your system to go haywire. So we're just going to do 2 cores for now. Acceleration, just leave it be. Display, I usually keep it at the highest is 128. You can use a second monitor if you want to as well, but we're not going to. We're just going to do it on the 1. And then for the acceleration, I usually like to turn on the 2D acceleration. So there's that. Don't need to worry about these. For storage, now this is where we're going to be inserting our disk image. You can get the disk image by having Microsoft create one right on their website. It's just, you download the tool and then you'll be able to create a disk image. It's through the setup process. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and click this disk icon, and you usually want to choose the virtual disk file. And then see, now we have our Windows ISO file. Usually we get something like this when once you download the disk image from the Microsoft tool. So we're going to go ahead and add that. Now, audio, you don't really have to mess with too much. Network, I usually like to leave my network on NAT. You can do some advanced if you want to change your adapter type, but for this case we don't need to do that anything about that. USB, you can add another USB controller, but you'll notice down here that there's an exclamation point. However, you're going to need the extension pack, but since we're not going to be really using the USB too much, I'm just going to leave it at 1.1. Shared folders, you can actually like bring folders between one computer to the other using this. So for the sake of this video, we're going to be doing it. So we're going to add the folder, choose other, and we're going to go select the folder we want. This is the one I have selected. And usually it depends on what you're using it for, but for the sake of what you can do is you can select it so it's read only, so it cannot bring copy files to the shared folder from the VM. We're going to be checking that anyway, because if I'm usually going to bring something from the main operating system to the VM, we just want to select to read only. And usually it's also helpful with dealing with malware, so you don't get something spread into your malware folder and then your main system infected. We're also going to want to auto mount it. But usually, if you're going to be running malware samples, like I do, inside these virtual machines, I would not even create a shared folder in the first place for extra protection. User interface, you don't really have to touch too much either, and alright, now we're ready to roll. Press OK to save it, and we're going to now launch it. Now the second it starts, you're going to go ahead and press the F12 key on your keyboard. And then we're going to select a boot disk. Usually, of course, since we put it into our CD-ROM place, we're going to press C. And then now, it should be starting the setup process for Windows 10. This should be a simple setup. Usually just want to install it just like normal. Pretty much like you would on a normal 10 machine. Now here you can just go ahead and enter your license key, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to press I don't have a product key. And we're just going to select Windows 10 Pro. Accept the license agreement, and we're going to do the custom installation. You can see here is our 50 gigabyte drive. First we're going to grab it that, and now it's going to start copying files, and we just have to wait for a bit for all this to go through. Alright, here we are. Alright, here we go. We're going to say yes, we are in the United States as usual. This is like again, this is just like the Windows 10 basic setup. Skip. I'm going to sign up for personal use. We're just going to do an offline account. No. We're just going to put for the main user, just user. We're not going to do a password. We're going to decline for Cortana. No. We're going to select no on that. And for this, of course, it's a virtual machine. There's no point on enabling any of this. So we're just going to press no on all those. And I should mention, now that we're pretty much this part, and we can even disconnect the disk if we wanted to. Usually you could do that first. Just right click on the disk icon down here and press remove disk from virtual drive. And now it's out. Alright, now we are in the desktop. We're just going to press no on this. Close that. It's going to try searching for a display driver, but it's most likely not going to find one. So now you see that there's a small box here, which a little hard to maneuver around. So what we're going to do is up here in the top, we're going to insert the GIST. Under devices, we're going to insert the GIST edition CD image. Once you press that, it will. Now you can also hear, if you may not be able to hear it, but the audio is really staticky in Windows 10. I'm still trying to look into that, how to get that fixed myself. So for now, I'm just going to turn off the audio so you don't have to listen to that. Now that we have the disk inserted, alright, and now we're just going to launch the GIST editions. Say yes to give it MM privileges. Next, usually you can leave all this in. And then press install. Of course, accept anything that comes through here during this installation here. I should also point out that as you can see here, we do not see the network drive. And then now it wants to reboot, which we will now do. Now it still looks squared, but just gonna give it a second for VirtualBox to start up. And boom, there we go. Now everything is more rectangular. Now you may have noticed down here we don't have that little watermark that says you need to activate Windows. Well, and this is probably one of the reasons why. If we go into Task Manager here and under the Performance tab, you could see that it automatically detects that it's a virtual machine. Now, I don't know how it can detect it's a virtual machine. I don't know if it's a certain driver or if it's just something that Windows has done themselves. But it seems that Microsoft sees, okay, yeah, this is a virtual machine, so there's no point of putting that watermark there. But I don't know. I'm not Microsoft. So yeah, and now we can also head into here, into this PC, and there is our shared drive. And we can see here's our test document, shared VM file, that's what I put in there. And there is my YouTube and Discord picture as soon as it loads here. Yep, and it all looks fine. So that is how you install Windows 10 on VirtualBox, and I hope you all have enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you're new around here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and yeah, I'll talk to you all later.